My name is Bri Sargent. Thank you so much for being here. I have been a workplace safety professional for nearly 20 years, and I have trained over 100 safety managers. I absolutely love what we do. And over at the Safety Geek, our jam is all about management commitment and support, getting employee engagement, building that safety culture, and the psychology of safety. Today, we are talking about creating memorable safety meetings. We're actually going to be talking about memory and how memory works and how we can use these hacks into our safety meetings to make them more memorable. So let's get started on today's topic. So here's what I want to tell you is that where this hit home for me, where I actually started going, I need to kind of change up my safety training, happened about 13 or 14 years ago. I attended a safety training where I learned the term build a bridge, and it's a proper lifting term. I'm not going to get into what it means, but it's basically a way that you can properly lift by using your hand to build a bridge to support yourself and all of that. That was an aha moment for me. Like, it was such an easy concept. It was a useful tip. It was practical. And I could see that you could take this tip and put it into work. It was like reality of the situation type of thing. To this day, I still remember that training. I still remember that tip. I share it with you guys, right? So the point is that like I never forgot it. And why is that? It's because it was that aha moment. So what we need to do is take things like that and put it into our safety training. But before I can get into the tips, I want to talk about how memory actually works, like the neuroscience of it in layman's terms. So when you are listening to me talk here, when you first hear me, that is your short-term memory. That is going to be the first 5 to 10 seconds. That is short-term memory. And then what happens is your brain encodes it, which means that it tries to understand it. It alters it a little bit into your own language, I guess you can call it. It's your own ability to understand something. It encodes it, and then it's going to store it into your long-term memory. Now, later on today, you may be thinking back about build a bridge. That is retrieving that memory. So that's how we actually use our memories. It goes from short-term, encoding, and then into long-term. And then if we want to remember it, we have to pull it out of storage and we retrieve it. And then we're taking it out of storage, we're looking at that memory again, and then we're storing it back again. This is why memory is so palatable. Like, people can change their memory. I'm sure you guys have heard this about criminal investigations, how memory is just not that reliable, because every time you're pulling it out of storage, you're changing it a little bit. We don't have to worry about that because we're not putting people in jail, but I want you to kind of understand how this works. And that's why memory kind of fades over time, because if you don't pull it out, it's sitting there in storage and it's getting all dusty and dirty and you just don't remember it every time. But so you have to constantly kind of retrieve it, pull it out of storage, look at it again, and then put it back into storage to really solidify that memory. So there are two ways. There are only two ways that you can strengthen your memory. One is in the encoding phase, and two is in the storage phase, right? So let's talk about encoding first. There are a couple of different things you can do to make sure that your training gets encoded to where it is going to go into that long-term memory nice and strong. The first is creating surprising events, things that are just like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, right? So when you give the unexpected, it really shocks it into the system and it strengthens that memory. So if there's anybody out there that has ever given birth, you will know that you remember that day of giving birth like for the rest of your life. 9/11, another great example. I can remember everything I was doing on 9/11 from the moment I got my first phone call until later that night when I was finally able to watch the news. So those are surprising, shocking events. So that is how it's getting into the memory nice and strong. So how can we do that with safety meetings? So you can actually shock them in some way or form. I love the nail gun to the safety glasses idea because people never expect that. Or when you're doing a fall protection with a dummy fall, that's another one that is like a shocking event and just kind of puts it into memory, or you yourself can do something surprising during the training as well. Another way to strengthen that encoding is through aha moments. That's why Build a Bridge stuck with me. So you have to come up with something that they just all of a sudden it kind of like clicks, like in their brain, they're like, oh, I get it. So it's that, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Yeah, I finally understand it. So this could be like the feeling of the benefits of stretching. So like if you're trying to teach somebody an ergonomics program and you have them do one stretch and they're like, oh gosh, I can't touch my toes. And then you have them do it again and they can touch further. And then you do it again and they can touch further. Those are the things that can encode the memory of like stretching is good for my body, right? So try to build in those aha moments where they can take what you're teaching them and apply it to what they already know. So that way they further understand it. Next is music. If you put your safety training to music, it's going to encode a lot stronger. This is why I remember all the words to every Twisted Sister song that I heard in the 80s, right? Because it's just set to music, you remember those lyrics, and it just makes a really, really strong memory. So how can we do this in safety training? Add music to your training. And my theme song used to be like Safety Dance is that one of the salespeople used to put on every time I walked in the room. I always thought that was funny, but you can have like a theme song. You can put like a specific training into music. You can have an incentive program where you actually tell everybody like, take a safety policy and make a music video and we're going to incentivize it, right? Put it on YouTube or something like that. That's a lot of fun. So there's lots of different ways that you can add music to your training. In fact, like my daughter, she's currently studying for her AP exam and she was struggling with it. And I was like, put it to music. I was like, you're a musician, put it to music. You'll be perfectly fine. And then the next way to make sure that you can encode a memory is acronyms. Acronyms are a great way to strengthen that memory. This is taking a safety concept and putting it into like a word that's easy to remember. So let's use fire extinguishers and the use of fire extinguishers as an example. The acronym is PASS, pull, aim, squeeze, sweep, right? So it's very easy for everybody to remember that. If you just remember PASS, even if like I'm always forgetting the sweep part whenever I get to the end of PASS. But if you do it enough, it makes it easier to remember. So you can start getting your people used to remembering, like, what does pass mean? Maybe they'll only get pull for a while. And then you keep getting them to retrieve that memory and it starts getting stronger and stronger. So create a fun word out of the process. Just don't use this too much. Like I used to work for a company where they killed us with acronyms. Everything was an acronym and it was actually annoying. And then I just kind of like pushed it away. But like the PASS for fire extinguishers is good. The other one I remember a lot is not necessarily an acronym, but it's also having to do with fire extinguishers, where like A is for ashes, B is for barrels. K is for kitchens, D is for don't touch it because it's metals, C is for circuits, that type of thing. So you can use stuff like that too to help encode that memory. The second way is to focus on storage. Okay, so once it is already in long-term memory, how can we make sure it's stored in there nice and strong and easy to retrieve? There are two ways that you could do this. One is chunking. So the human memory can really only remember 5 to 9 digits at a time, the average being 7. Think about it. Phone numbers are 7 digits long, right? But people that can probably remember a ton of phone numbers or a ton of digits. Or there was one guy who could like name pi like 100 digits down, right? How do they do that? That is through chunking. This is when you group pieces of information together. The one group of information is then considered one piece out of the 7 to 9 that a typical person can remember. So that's why instead of saying 52, we say 52, because it's easy to remember 52 a lot better than trying to remember 52. So, and this is why, like, if you ever go to a restaurant, here's a tip for you. If you ever go to a restaurant and the waitress or waiter is taking your order and they're doing it by memory, what they're doing is chunking. That's how they're remembering it. The problem is if you interrupt the process while they're chunking it, they're going to make mistakes. So if you have a waitress or waiter who's not writing down the order, don't interrupt them. They're likely to make mistakes because what they're doing is they're chunking it by person. So when I see somebody who can do this with a table of more than 7 to 9, I'm always like, they're going to mess up. They are. You can't do it. It's like physically impossible unless you have one of those like super, super memories. For the average person, it's physically impossible. 7 to 9 things, 5 to 9 things, with the average being 7. So how can we use this in our safety training? One, we can make sure that we're giving them short, tiny chunks of information. So if you're creating a PowerPoint presentation, you really should only have no more than 6 bullets on there. I prefer 4 to 6 with like 6 words per bullet. So you want to keep the information short so that way it's easier for them to remember it. You also want to give them time to get it to go from short-term memory to long-term memory. So if you give them a piece of information, relate it to something they already know, encoding, and then have them think about it for a moment, that's putting it into long-term memory. It doesn't take a long time to get into long-term memory. It's just that once it's there, it tends to fade unless you have them retrieve it. So if you go to bullet point number 2, have them retrieve this memory and relate it to bullet point number 2. It's all like a strengthening chain. So like, let's say I was teaching lockout tagout and I said, step 1 is to notify all the affected. I got it. Came out of my memory. All of the affected employees that you're going to lock out the machine, right? And then we do this so that way, no one's trying to mess with the machine while you're locking it out. Pause. Step 2. Once everyone has been notified, all the affected people are notified, then you can turn off the machine, right? So you're kind of like bringing it back and forth to try to retrieve the memory and then strengthen the memory. So small chunks and then give them time and keep your chunks less than 7. So the next way that you can strengthen the memory through storage is by reinforcement. Every time we are pulling that memory out and looking at it, we are strengthening it. So what you need to do as the safety manager is pull that memory out a lot. Have them recall that training over and over again. And I know I've talked about this in like webinars and in other Facebook Lives. You need to touch them 7 times in order for them to buy into safety. But it's the same thing. When you're bringing it up to them 6 or 7 times, you're forcing them to pull the memory from long term and look at it and strengthen that memory even further. So come up with ways that you can have them recall that memory. It could be through focus coaching sessions with your supervisors. It could be just reminding them during pre-shift meetings, lunch and learns, your posters, all different ways that you can have them retrieve that memory. And then the idea is you want to increase your intervals over time. So very close to the training, you want to do a lot of intervals of reminding them. But then as they start to get it, you can spread it out and you can spread it out. The second way to strengthen the storage of that memory is to have them teach the topic. The best way to learn something is to teach something. So maybe during your training, you partner people up afterwards and you have them review the concepts with each other. What were those 7 concepts that you taught? Have them go back and forth and teach each other those 7 concepts. A mentor program is another great way. So if you have new employees, you can select a current employee to mentor them on a certain topic. And that would be a great way for them to teach it. Or they could teach it during the pre-shift meetings or in the toolbox talks once a week, whatever you happen to be doing. And the third way that you can get it into their storage or increase their storage of that safety training is by practical experience. This could be done a couple of ways. One is role playing. This is why role playing works so well in safety training because you can actually like practice. Everybody hates doing the role playing because they feel like they're acting and all of that, but you're practicing it right there in the training. And that when they have to apply it in the real world, they will fall back on that memory and it makes it stronger for them. It makes it easier for them to recall. You can also do the task while you're teaching them. So if I'm teaching forklift operation, right? And I get to the part where I'm teaching the daily inspection, the pre-op inspection of the forklift, instead of doing it there in the classroom, let's go out to a piece of equipment, right? Let's go out to that piece of equipment and everybody tell me a piece that we inspect. Doing that allows them to teach it a little bit, and then it's practical experience. So you're actually learning it as you go. So going out onto the floor is very, very helpful. And the last way is evaluations. So if you have them evaluate each other actually doing the tasks, so think about lockout, tagout, we do evaluations with that too. That is an excellent way to reinforce that training too. That is how you can get your safety meetings more memorable. So what I want you to do moving forward is when you look at your safety training, go, how can I make sure that this is encoded a little bit stronger and that it is reinforced and strengthened more than just this one time? And try to change it up. PowerPoints alone are not going to cut it. Just showing somebody a PowerPoint does not work. That's why like having them actually go out, maybe do a workbook or a worksheet, will help improve that. And I guarantee you will get better results with these memory hacks. Now, if you like this stuff and you want to dive deeper into it, make sure that you get on my mailing list. And I will tell you, I have a free guide called the 5 Ways to Make Employees Crazy for Safety that will give you lots of aha moments and lots of surprising events that you can use in your safety training. And you can get that from thesafetygeek.com/5 ways. You guys have an amazing day. Thank you. Bye-bye.